How do you pick up an entrepreneur? There's one trait that all entrepreneurs have. Entrepreneurs must have a lot of grit. The one that you really pick up when you say it sticks out like a sore thumb is your ability to sell.
You've traveled through many different worlds. I think you've got an exposure from many other countries. You've worked in environments where most people would never even know exists, right? So what's your story? Where does it all start? Give us the year, we'll do the calculations.
We've been here since independence, since 1990, and that already now tells you a lot.
Very few people understand what it feels like to carry the pressure of managing capital at scale. Fewer still know what it's like to be trusted with billions of dollars in assets, not once, but repeatedly, knowing that every decision impacts institutions, businesses, jobs, futures, and the whole country. Today's guest is someone whose work operates quietly, but whose influence travels far through continents. From shaping capital allocation and investment thinking across Africa, to impacting hundreds of businesses through policy, markets, and education, his leadership has been felt far beyond boardrooms. He has moved between worlds most people never see: central banking, global markets, venture capital, grassroots entrepreneurship, and understands both the promise and the pressure that comes with building economies, not just companies. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Arinze Okafor.
Sure, thanks, Ignatius. That's a very heavy introduction. And you're very right. This one you left out.
Yeah, I told you. Eh? So today, the first day I met you, you said to me, there are many entrepreneurs out there, but the real ones stick out like a thumb. What made you reach that conclusion?
No, thanks, Ignatius, and I'm quite excited to be here. So I think it's a good question, but similar to our chat earlier, how do you pick up an entrepreneur? There's one trait that all entrepreneurs have. Like I said, whether you're in a suit and tie, so luckily I'm in a suit today.
But no tie.
I had a couple of meetings. I don't like tie. And I think this was also a problem when I was at the central bank, but at least they accepted me.
Yeah.
Because what was the most important thing is also to generate alpha for the portfolio. So I think that was my bargaining chip. But really, back to your question, if there's one skill or two that entrepreneurs have, one is grit. Entrepreneurs must have a lot of grit. But the one that you really pick up when you say it sticks out like a sore thumb is your ability to sell. Once you walk into a room, whether, like I said, you're in a suit and tie or you're an informal trader, selling kapana, your ability to speak, to connect with your customer and ultimately sell, that is a skill that you don't just learn from a textbook. That comes from being in the field. Or like some of my friends say, being in the ring.
Being in the ring.
You have to be in the ring.
Getting backed in the corner.
Yes. If you haven't taken a punch, they say you have a soft jaw. When you have taken one punch, you know what to do to avoid the next punch. That's really entrepreneurship. That skill. And that sense of smell, hunting an opportunity. Those type of things a textbook will not teach you.
I like the start of this already. We're onto something. But, first I want to hear about your backstory a little bit. I mean, you were born in Nigeria, as you said, and but you grew up here in Namibia. And, I mean, you've traveled through many different worlds. I think you've got an exposure from many other countries as well. I think you've worked in environments where most people would never even know exists, right? So what's your story? Where does it all start,
Yeah, so that's a very good one. So yes, I was born in Nigeria, then came to Namibia when I was 2. So I won't give away my age, but I mean, yeah, been here
give us the year, we'll do the calculations.
Been here since independence, since 1990, and that already now tells you a lot. So yeah, so I'm a product of Ema Delta. So and you see why I'm so passionate about that is that if you know about many of the Ema kids and Delta, many of us we were called, street soccer kids, but very intelligent. And a lot of us throughout, whether it's primary school, high school, we've always sort of kept together since then, especially my group. And that really just helped us, shape sort of who we are. I think the link, let's say, to West Africa, I want to draw it and say, in West Africa, their competition is everything. And that sort of shapes the way one, sort of thinks. So when you look at West Africa, where you're dealing with more than 300, 400 million people, their average is not good enough. So I like to say I've got a West African spirit with a Namibian calm. So, as Namibians, we're very calm people. And I mean, that type of trait, it helps a lot because you're able to look at opportunities, assess it, with a really calm, mindset. We're not all over the place. Yeah. But you see the benefit, or I'd say the linkage back to my West African roots is how you look at opportunities. When you look at SMS of the day, like on the Namibian, some people will see problems. Other people, the ones that now start to make it, see opportunities. And if you really pick up across the African continent, you will see a very common trait with West African businesses. It's again what? That grit, that determination, how to sense an opportunity. And that's really then, I would say, really what then shaped sort of my own upbringing. So now when you draw that back, I mean, finishing, Delta, then obviously I had an opportunity to go and study in UK. Again, different environment. So there you start to see the differences between Europe or the advanced economies and our economies. The only difference there is they have structure. But I tell you now, Ignatius, when you look at the current European population, they are envying Africa. Why? Africa has got youth on its side and talent. And that's something that you pick up only when you are exposed. You now start to realize that, okay, what you see here as a challenge, or, as, I want to say, as discomfort, when you travel to different countries, you start to realize that, no, man, we actually have a lot going for us. But you need to be exposed. Yeah.
I like that. That. Because funny enough, I was actually having a conversation with a friend the other day, because he spent the last 15 years in Germany. And so he was saying when he came back to Namibia, he was so shocked in a way because of how sometimes, because as you said, it can be a good thing to be very relaxed, but it can also be a very bad thing, because if you look at other or more developed economies, there's
there's hunger.
There's speed in doing things, and there's that urgency to do things, right? And he couldn't find that here. And he noticed, because he has like a couple of other friends who were working jobs, and they would come and they would complain and say, I don't like my job. I don't like how much they're paying me. I want better. And then you'll be like, okay, cool. We have a chat. Next week, it's the same conversation. A couple of days later, it's the same conversation. And then at some point, it's just like, why aren't you doing something about it? And so when you say exposure, what I've also noticed for myself as an entrepreneur, one of the reasons why what allows our marketing company to be unique in a sense is that when we gauge how well we are doing, we don't gauge it based on the local market. I was very fortunate enough to have a friend who's from Germany. I always speak about him. And when we talk about the standard of what we do marketing-wise for our clients and all that, I always base it on what he is doing. Because sometimes I look at what we're doing and then I think, if we were in this country, we wouldn't have any business. And so that has allowed us, because of that exposure, that has allowed us to think a little bit differently. And I think it's a very good thing that sometimes to be able to travel, go to different places, because sometimes entrepreneurship can be as simple as just taking the ideas from there and re-implementing it. So would you say that traveling was the biggest effect on you for entrepreneurship, or was it something else? Like, where was that point where, I was skipping chapters, not yet, eh? No. Yeah. So, I mean,
you went,
yes, you went to study in the UK. So, where that point where you decide, okay, let me pursue business, let me pursue this career that I'm going into, private equity, wealth management, where is that turning point, where you have like a button switching in you and say, you know what, I think I might be made for this thing? Or was it always like that?
No. So, and I think that's why I was deliberate to give sort of an insight, when we started with Emogenaut, Delta.
Yeah.
So I love soccer and I love sports. So you see, that aha moment came. I think there was one day I was sitting with my dad and he had asked me, what do you want to really become? So there were two things I had found fascinating. You grow up watching crime movies. So you think, okay, maybe I want to be like an investigator, police, But at the time, I wanted to be a footballer. So my dad told me, yes, you might think you are good, but what happens after one tackle? Where you're tackled, you're injured. What do you think happens? You can't earn. So, it got to me because what's your fallback plan? So this was like early in grade 10, grade 11. So at the time, when you're younger, so I think everything, especially when you're younger, it's about house parties, playing soccer, etc., etc. And let's be honest, you need to learn from those type of things. And it was fun. At least there were less consequences then than doing those type of things now. But the point I'm making is during that time, you see, we were very naughty. No drugs, but very naughty. So then my parents, what happens to you if you're messing up? Typically here, if you are, Oshivambo, they'll send you to the north, right?
Yeah.
If you're anywhere else, you can go on the farm or wherever. So I have family as well in the UK and the States, but my parents took a deliberate decision, said, no, you're going to go and study, say, in Nigeria. So that I did university in Nigeria. And that really changed my mindset because you see here, if you get a 80%, oh, you're on top of the world. There, my friend, even a 95%, some kids are crying.
For getting a 95%.
For getting a 95% because 4 or 5 people got 100%. That changes your mindset.
Yeah.
So already there, I think in second or third year, I was doing economics. So that time you watch a lot of investment movies. So that clicked and I said, okay, this is the path I want to take. I want to be in investments and finance. So after finishing economics, that's when I got the opportunity to go and study in the UK. And there again, when you looked at that system, so I had also an opportunity to have a part-time job. Again, different mindset. They don't really care about being paid for being in an internship. What matters most is the work experience. So again, it just started to reinforce that thing that you see, discipline obviously matches when you get now exposure. So that's really then what led to me, starting, say, CFA. Because I realized, what do you need to make it in the investment space? So that's when, after doing the master's, I started my journey, studying towards CFA. But very important to mention is my first job was actually at Bank of Namibia. So again, if you see the link, you start from an intern, you come even with a master's, but what actually gets you through the door is that ability to deliver, not vibes. Not vibes. So you also have to be humble and be hungry to grow. So, and I had very good leaders at the time who gave me an opportunity. So with that introduction, it was quite a humbling introduction. But what I would like to share is that I never managed a dollar before I was given the opportunity to manage billions. The only thing I had was a good attitude. Yes, I had a master's, but it's more potential. So it's the leadership at the time that then believed in my potential and then gave me an opportunity to manage our country's billions. So you see, there's a very strong link to, and I want to make this as an explanation for IQ. It's where luck meets preparation. So I had been preparing over the years. And then the luck came whereby Bank of Namibia at the time required a portfolio manager. Right place, right time, and the rest is history.
Wow. I have actually a few questions listening to all of that. Yeah, I think one could learn a thing or two. I mean, I was taking notes. That's why I like having a book when we're having these sessions, because I learn a lot. And so you mentioned something about potential, because I am actually quite curious on that myself, because, firstly, for starters, okay, I'm at a point where sometimes we sit and we have to hire people and all that. And previously I've hired for potential. And, that is kind of, sometimes it bites you in the ass because you're like, oh, but I see your potential, but the person never sees it. So I don't know, what are some, what have you observed as ingredients, that would allow you, or what do you think allowed you in that position for your potential to be seen as, was it in the leaders being patient with you? Was it in you willing to go the extra mile? What was it that allowed your potential to be seized and to be seen, and and people want to invest in that. Because sometimes I see people with potential nowadays and I'm like, no, it's all good, I'm not interested. Or and it has happened for many people. I probably also have potential to someone, but they see me now and then they're like, no, it's all good. Because I've been also on the other end of pitching and trying to share the ideas, the vision. Please come on board. You are the piece missing. So yeah, what was it, do you think, that allowed, because you mentioned, luck plus preparation, but what was it? What do you think?
So I'm going to answer this in two sort of steps. So the one, like the question now you asked, like when you're hiring for potential. So I think as a leader, whether any HR manager or entrepreneur who's hiring, the most important skill for me is attitude. And I'll tell you why, Ignatius. You see, all of us can come with a great CV, but translating that CV into getting the job done is two different things. Most skills can be taught, but you see, attitude, you can't teach it. You see, once you have a good attitude, then you are what? Teachable. So I know I picked it up quite early, especially during the early parts of my career. I never came, to the table wearing, I have a master's, or I have a no. All of that is just potential. When you come to the table, and I think it comes back again to humility. So I won't contradict myself by saying you must have a good ego, meaning you must be confident, but you need to be humble and be teachable. And once you have that, you can actually, the doors open quite quickly for you from a career perspective, because then you have leadership that is willing to teach you. But when you come with arrogance that I know it all, we are all human. They say, this Ignatius, you think you are clever. No problem. Yes, I'll need that or blame.
Yeah.
It's human nature, so you have to be teachable. When it now translates to entrepreneurship and, sort of letting people buy into your idea. So there it's slightly different. Attitude is also important, but you need to understand in the Namibian space, in our culture, seeing is believing, unfortunately. So to get buy-in, yes, you need to believe in yourself, but you need to be able to show what have you done with the little that you have. That's quite important. Then you see the attitude, and then that intersect between luck and preparation. When you've shown the little that you've had, but because you have a good attitude, you've also been able to develop a wider network. And it's the network that ultimately then opens door to the buy-in. Because, look at our conversation, I think last week. We spoke.
Yes.
There are certain things you were saying that just make me now think, okay, this guy knows what he wants. You see? You may not be articulating it fully, but I can see your passion. And that already, I came to you and said, okay, what do you do? But you're able to articulate it to me in less than 1 minute, 2 minutes. That's what some entrepreneurs lack. Is sometimes you're sitting with a Sven Thiemer, you're lucky at a wine tasting, and the man is asking you while he's sober, what do you do? My friend, that again is where luck meets preparation. If you have been preparing, that is the 2 minutes of your life to tell that man what it is you do and what do you need. Do you see where I'm going?
Yeah.
But again, you need to be a person who's approachable and teachable. And you see, that just comes with a personality trait. So you see, attitude plays a role whether you are early in your career or you're trying to get buy-in from someone. So I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And I really want to touch more on that point of, understanding what it is that you're doing, or being able to explain it within 1 to 2 minutes, tying into preparation as well. I actually learned that the hard way. I think it was just, I don't remember when exactly it was, but I was at the Vivo Energy building, hey? I was going there to try and request a meeting with their current marketing manager. So funny enough, as I'm standing at the reception, she walks out. And then I say, oh, yeah, I see you. Hey, I was actually here for you. I wanted to see if we can have a discussion in regards to marketing and how we can align together, if we can even help at all, right? And then she says, actually, I'm on my way out, but maybe you can call my assistant and we can schedule something. And I know sometimes once it gets to the assistant or the receptionist, never mind.
Can
So
die a
I was
natural
like,
death.
yeah. So I'm like, you're going to the elevator? Let me come with. And then I made a joke of, oh, this is actually my moment to do an elevator pitch. And then she laughed and she said, yes.
Yes.
And she was serious. She's like, I'm serious. So we're in the elevator. An elevator from their floor to the bottom takes about 15 seconds. And within those 15 seconds, I just saw her interest dying. Then I could feel it. It's like I was speaking, I was trying to explain. And then that's when I realized I actually don't understand what it is we do. You know, we've been trying to jump at, hop at every single opportunity. It's like, and then I said, that's like, what problem are we actually solving for people? You know, and we're lost in it bothered me so much. I went home that evening. I went and I sat there with ChatGPT. Help me put together an effective elevator pitch.
Yes.
And then, so then ChatGPT helped me realize what I was doing wrong. Because what happens a lot of the times is like when we are asked, okay, what is it that you do? Or you start to explain features and things that it's like, what is at the core of what you're trying to do? What problem are you solving? Which is the basis of entrepreneurship, solving problems for people. So when you speak about that, that's what I was thinking. You know, I was like, that has served me well since then. But it was a painful lesson to learn because it was a moment in which I really wanted to make a good impression, and it was then difficult to make contact again. But fortunately, we made it back.
but that's brilliant, and that's a practical example. So you see, and I think when you're inviting me here today, I'm a pragmatist. So I like things that are simple and practical. The example you gave, we shouldn't fear failure. And I think this is really one thing that I've become accustomed to over the years. When I say you need to be confident, you need to be comfortable that you are going to make mistakes. As a capital allocator, I'll tell you now, I like entrepreneurs that have tried stuff. You learn much more from failure than what you learn from success. So you see that traumatizing experience where you could already pick up that, this person I've lost the person. It can damage your confidence.
It was painful and sad.
But if now your first whatever pitch went right, are you going to work on your weaknesses? You won't. You think you're perfect. So entrepreneurship comes, a lot of the success stories, and you can listen to many of the successful businessmen, even here in Namibia. Ask them how many enterprises have they started and failed. It's going to be more than one. And that says a lot. So unfortunately, Namibia it's a small population, but it's also tough on failure. But if you have grit and you have this mentality of, getting back up, you start to develop a thick skin. And there's nothing more practical than what failure can teach you versus what, a textbook would tell you this is how entrepreneurship is. And I know we're speaking a lot about entrepreneurship, but it's the same thing also with, look at our youth unemployment, right? So you either become an entrepreneur or you get a job. Many people ask, how do I, network? I'm not a big wine drinker, right? But I realized, and one of my mentors also taught me, you don't need to be a wine drinker. You just need to be a wine taster sometimes. What does that mean?
Yeah, same question I have.
It then means like sometimes your boss could be at a wine tasting event. He could be at a golf tournament. So you need to intentionally put yourself in places where you think you want to have a career in. And you'll have the same experience as your 15-second experience in the lift. You'd be shocked that at that particular event, you maybe meet your future boss. And it will be what you told him in the 1-2 minutes of what do you want to do. So the crux of what I'm saying is whether you are, an aspiring person who wants to get a job or entrepreneurship, know what you want and be able to say it, within 30 seconds to a minute, 2 minutes max. It's quite important.
Sounds easier said than done, eh?
Yeah, but I don't think it's that difficult. If you want to be an economist, where do they end up? Central banking, NSA, or in policy? You need to understand the same thing as when I said an entrepreneur is selling. Understand where you want to work. If you want to end up at Namfisa, understand what Namfisa does. You'll see on their annual reports the type of platforms that they are on. Many of these platforms are free. You need to be there.
Tell me a little bit about your childhood.
Mm.
I'm very interested on that. The reason why I asked that is because, you meet a lot of entrepreneurs. You've also told me something that I recently learned, survivor entrepreneurship. But then you also get a lot of entrepreneurs that are there for revenge, for a vendetta, and then you get also those that were just so bothered by something they decided to go fix it. And so I want to know what was your childhood like?
Yeah, that's interesting. So as I said, so I grew up more or less in an entrepreneurial family.
Mm-hmm.
So for those that may not know, after Hair City, so you see, before the era of the Brazilian hair, the extensions, so Hair City, I think, was one of the local shops that were in Namibia. So I think my mom and dad at the time were the second hair shop in Namibia.
Wow.
So already from late primary school, high school, so my parents are quite strict. You see, typical West African parents, So already early on, to even get pocket money, we were forced, to work. So even straight from street soccer, you need to now run, go back to the shop, see how they do it. So we were selling hair.
Yeah.
So quite early, I learned, just the basics of, how to sort of run a business, how to manage your customer, your employees, while small. So, and remember, I keep on going back again to the street soccer is because a lot of us, our childhood is, and where you end up in life, it's based off the people you grew up with, right? So we were the Hockland Park boys. So that's really where I grew up. So a lot of us, and we started together at Emma, went to Delta, and a lot of them also, same path, UNAM, or at the time, Polytechnic, which is now gone to NUST. But that, again, that same community shaped sort of the way one views, like life. So already a lot of us, some of them were in the same career paths, economics, investments. But a lot of it came from the fact that, as a child, who you spend the most time with. When they say, tell me who your friends, I'll tell you who you are. It couldn't explain life any more clearly. So as we were growing up, a lot of our friends, we had a commitment to say, you must play hard, but you must also study hard. So we were relatively naughty, but we were kids, right? But all of us, we had a competition amongst ourselves. I think the lowest amongst our set, we got 32 points in grade 10. Why I'm sharing this is, again, when you go through life, make mistakes. You see, you will learn from them, But throughout, especially with the friends that we've kept in good contact with, those same principles of togetherness, looking out for each other, it has helped us up until this day. And in a country where there's 3 million people, I'll tell you now, Ignatius, relationships matter. So you see, in your earlier questions and in our other discussions, we spoke about attitude, sort of about, having sort of a good mindset and skill. But relationships are built sometimes of childhood relationships. And you see in Namibia, where it's so small and things are relational or personalized, decision makers sit between 1, 2, 3 people. And if you now draw the link, maybe you went to school with this person or you were friends with that decision maker's cousin, it's life. And a lot of key things that will shape ultimately whether you succeed or fail also will come back down to relationships. And again, if you're not an approachable person, you don't have a good attitude, Namibia, it spreads very fast. You see now when you've done something wrong, quick, it's on social media or WhatsApp. The same way a good thing can also come from a relationship, because that's where you hear this word of vetting or recommendations. Relationships matter. I can't emphasize that enough. So if that's the one thing, when we share this podcast, she said I must look into that camera.
Yes, that one.
Attitude and relationship management is key. It's key to your success or key to your failure.
Yeah. Tell me, you said you studied in the UK, right? And then came to build your career here in Namibia. What was it, not necessarily cultural differences, but what were some things you learned in that time that you would say, aside from attitude and all that, what was the biggest shift for you? Because I can imagine being sent to the UK, I don't know, you probably felt very, maybe how should I say, anxious about it, going to a completely different country.
Yeah.
And also
Terrible weather.
terrible weather. And then you tell me also that you learned there that there's this big culture as well as to, I think people there understand or where you were exactly, there was a better understanding of value creation that affected your career as well. That's how I understood it as, because what I have also noticed frequently, you know, when you say you want interns for a lot of people, or even you find it with students, even locally, a lot of them will go apply for a job or an internship. And then once the position has been described, their first question is, oh, how much does it pay? Or in general, I've experienced that with a lot of people. And so when you tell me that money isn't the pushing factor, and of course now I can completely understand, because the standards of living might be different at that time also that you were in those countries. So it would be unfair to just use that to generalize, yes. But I have seen a very strong correlation to people that understand value creation and people that are, oftentimes, I almost make it a joke in also sometimes when you're hiring, it says, I always want the people that say things like, oh yeah, it's fine, I'll work for free. Because within that, firstly, that person understands that when you do work for free, or in my case, I feel like when you do work for someone for free, they give you a certain level of respect and also almost like a responsibility that they feel they need to give you some knowledge in return so that you can use it out there, at least, you know, I guess. So I had the same experience because I had a period where one of my first mentors, I worked for him for 8 months for nothing. And at that time, I really needed money.
Yes.
But we pushed. I made a commitment. But what I realized over time, he would start taking me out for his lunch breaks. And I thought he was going home to eat at lunch. Lunchtime, he's going to his construction company. Like, oh, so you're doing construction as well.
Yes.
The next day, we're there at his recycling business. Another day, we're going to a waste management business where they were making these worms that you used to feed in agriculture. You used to feed chickens and also for fertilizer. So that helped me kind of realize, okay, there is, you know, you kind of, with this thing of working for free, obviously now when you're working for free, you also need to be very selective of who you give this attention to, because not everyone is going to give you the same return on your investment, right?
Yes.
So, yeah, so I want to understand, what were some of those character traits, those habits you observed that you would think also played a role within your career? And also, what's your take on such things, you know, offering to work for free and the understanding of value creation? Because I think that's a very big thing. And before now, I let you start, is that one thing I was really thinking about over the last week about value creation is that, you know, I find a lot of the times, a lot of us dream about passive income.
Yes.
Right? But if you really look at it, a lot of us also don't understand how to make active income while we're awake, you know, the skill sets to do it. Because I can imagine if you knew how to make more money, you would have the energy to want to go make more. As an entrepreneur, you said already, it's basically sales. So yeah, what's your take on value creation and those and working for free and things like that?
No, great. I think great question, and I like the context you've set up. So I think maybe let's start on value creation, and then I'll link it back to your first question in terms of what did one pick up, let's say being in a European environment. So you see, this thing of working for free, and you know, in Namibia, we get accused a lot of being entitled. But I agree with you to a sense that you need to also be intentional, but also selective to say in which areas do you not allow yourself to be exploited. But if there's one thing I really want to say is that, you see, depending on your goals, and you said it's easier said than done, depending on what you want. If you know you want to be here in 6 months' time, you need to break it down to say, what is going to help me get to that place that I want? Is it the money or is it the exposure? Many a times from what I've seen, more often than not, it again comes back down to attitude. You see, if someone comes to me and says, look, I really want to work for you. I've done homework on you, and I don't really need the money. I just want the exposure. It says a lot about yourself. You see, some might classify that as being naive, for instance, but especially if it's in an area where you want to be. There's this, I wanted to use the word when you were speaking, it's reverse psychology. Because the way I'm going to look at you versus another person is going to be completely different. That's why, again, I said Namibia is very relational and interpersonal. Now Ignatius has worked for me for 2 months free, and he's been committed. First person to the office, last person to leave. What do you think naturally starts to happen? What again now starts to happen? That intersect between luck and preparation. Now, in those 3 months, I want to put up a vacancy. What do you think starts to happen? You start to become the primary candidate. And it's not by luck, but it's because we met at a point in time where you just wanted to add value, to say, no, I really want to work on my skill set. But you may be solving a problem for me, but I'm not paying you. What does it start to do? It starts to work psychologically on me. I want to bring that back to what one learned, especially just staying a bit in UK, is mindset. I think one thing, whether it's UK or, and I want to say outside SADC, it's the mindset. No one owes you anything. And in Europe, and particularly UK, with the bad weather, my friend, sometimes you tell someone good morning on the train. They say, what's good about the morning? The weather is cuck.
Yeah.
You know? But jokes aside, you see, and I want to compare Joburg also like to London. Do you see the pace in Joburg? It's fast. Why? It's about what do you have to offer. We are in a time where it's about what do you have to offer. It's execution. What are your capabilities? You follow. It sounds a bit tough or sounds a bit transactional, but that's the value. What makes Ignatius unique? There could be many podcasts out there. We're here with More Than Logic. But you know what makes your podcast? It's not this nice name. It's you. It's what do you bring to the table? And that I learned very quickly, because I was in UK, 2011, 2012. Very quickly, I learned that there's nothing special. You can have 100 people with a master's or 100 people with a bachelor's. What is unique is about what you bring to the table. How do you think? How do you articulate? That's mindset. Second thing that's very different, I think, when you compare it to, let's say, Namibia, and what I picked up there, the people there, they believe a lot in systems. What does that mean in plain English? It just means having processes and working sort of synergy. So it's like ecosystem. Let me use that.
The way you do something.
The way you do something. So I'm a specialist, and I like to use a simple example of a car wash business. You want to open a car wash business. Maybe that is your specialty. But what makes a car wash business thrive? It's the atmosphere. You need to have not only people washing cars. There's music, people eating, maybe people buying. So I'm simplifying it, but that's an ecosystem. Should you do that all by yourself?
No.
No. So there, people specialize. If I'm good at a certain discipline, that's what I master. But my discipline is within a value chain. And these are the type of things that you pick up the difference between emerging economies and advanced economies. They focus a lot on systems thinking. How do I connect the dots? Policy informs, execution. So when you come up with a policy to say, I want to encourage entrepreneurship, it's linked. And what makes entrepreneurship work? You need what? Access to skills. That's capacity building. But you also need what? Access to markets. Where do I showcase my goods? You see how intentionally I've left access to capital at the end? Is because in other advanced economies, they focus a lot on systematic thinking. How does policy enable me to transition so that if I'm like this now, your product is, so let's say podcasts, who's going to consume it? You need platforms. That's access to market. And ultimately, when you have now capacity, which is the skills, access to market, what does it then do? capital amplifies that. So it's systematic thinking. And that's one thing I picked up quite early on, especially when I studied there. And then, especially when I came back, I think I was intentional to say, how do you connect with your ecosystem? Own your weaknesses, but play to your strengths. I think that's really, I would say, is a good takeaway for that camera, you say.
Yes.
Ecosystem thinking.
Ecosystem thinking.
That's the biggest difference between, let's say, emerging Africa and then obviously the advanced economies.
Yeah. What do you think people don't know about entrepreneurship?
I would phrase it differently.
Yeah.
I think everyone has an idea, but what I would say is that entrepreneurship, or the misperception of entrepreneurship, is that it's glamorous. It is not glamorous. A lot of the other mentors I speak to who have been in more years in business than I have, there's one thing they tell you consistently: you have to be nuts to be in entrepreneurship. You have to be crazy. It's a lonely path. It requires a lot of resilience, grit, and also emotional stability. But it also requires passion. So the successful entrepreneurs see every problem as an opportunity. That's your business case.
Mm-hmm.
So you're sometimes lucky, depending on, you can also inherit, right? But you notice there's still a skill to take on an advanced generational wealth. It's still a skill because some have gotten the same opportunity, but it hasn't quite worked out, even though, let's say, you inherited an asset base. So it really, I think your question just speaks to the crux of why is entrepreneurship, let's say, difficult in Namibia. It comes back down to what I said that I picked up, especially traveling. You see, in Namibia, policy informs everything. And I hope I will not be shot by my policy makers. I was one of you.
Yeah.
But I think policy needs to be practical. And I want to simplify this by saying a lot of our policies focus a lot on compliance. And compliance is not wrong. But entrepreneurship requires innovation and risk-taking with no guarantee of reward. So to answer your question bluntly, what people do not know about entrepreneurship is there is no guarantee of success. Sometimes you never. It's always probability. You see, you wake up, and depending whichever industry you're in, you wake up today, things seem great, right? But if you're complacent, look at COVID, your whole world can turn upside down. So entrepreneurship requires consistent evolution. Consistent evolution. You start to notice one joke. A lot of the entrepreneurs lose their hair. Why? It's stress, I don't know what it is,
I would lie. I worry about that one.
It is. So we joke about this, but entrepreneurship is stressful. I can tell you, even many corporates, I can be in a suit today and I want to give that example. So I'm in asset management.
Yes.
Right? Would I have been here today if there wasn't intentional policy? No. So you get where I'm going. JIPF started a localization program to say, how do we encourage more local Namibian asset managers? But it's also entrepreneurship. It's just more corporate, right? But without that backing, you see, in potential, would we be here today? No. But what enabled that is policy. So you see, what I'm trying to say is entrepreneurship, particularly in the Namibian environment, we need more pragmatism. And we need to make it safe to fail. Because I'm sure many of us, we fear failure so much that we end up not taking an opportunity. But it's a catch-22. The Namibian environment, seeing is believing. You have to take the risk for someone just to see, like almost, how do you say it in venture capital, proof of concept. That is really what I think entrepreneurship is about showing, what can I do? What can I deliver? Hope that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I hope I've addressed your your question. So we've spoken, a bit around the question, but I thought it's important really for us to address the crux of entrepreneurship. It's solving problems.
Yes.
Yeah. It's not lifestyle.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes.
Yeah. What I also do want to ask then, because I heard you speak about creating an environment where it's safe to fail. And I want to tie in again, because you mentioned that concept to me, which could you please explain once more? Survivor entrepreneurship. But so now, failing. There's on one hand there's failing. It's like a mistake that costs you maybe $100, and you can live with it.
Yes.
And there's some failures, some mistakes that cost you everything that you have in life. And in some instances, I find that, you spoke a lot about working capital as well, which is something that's not so common in our market, right? But in terms of creating a safe environment for failure, sometimes I feel, sometimes you just can't afford those failures, in a sense. And as much as you want to have as many failures as possible, some failures are very costly. And so one thing I have also realized, which is why platforms like we're making a platform like this, fortunately, is that you get your different types of mistakes or failures in a sense. And there's some failures that are just necessary. You're going to need to go through it.
Yes.
But then there's some mistakes that are very unnecessary that you could have just learned just by having a conversation like this from someone and being willing to learn, right? So how does one navigate or something like that? Because personally, there's still some mistakes where even if it's even things like hiring or buying equipment for a company or because some mistakes are just too expensive to. Obviously you will still learn something, you still need to be open to it, but some mistakes are really shattering. So how does one navigate that? And in terms of creating an environment that's safe for failure, what do you think can be done?
So almost what you're trying to say is, how do you create a soft landing?
Exactly.
Yeah.
At least a trampoline,
trampoline.
So when you come back down, you might not go as high again, but you go somewhere.
Yes. And unfortunately, Namibia sometimes doesn't provide one that soft landing. So I want to answer this as practical as one can and use a bit of my own experience and what others have taught me. And it goes back to, I think, your earlier question again, back to entrepreneurship. You see, ego has both good and bad sides. So they are necessary mistakes. Necessary mistakes are the ones that help you fail forward. What do I mean by that? If you are venturing a new industry, you are going to make mistakes, right? But how do you find that balance between where the mistake completely ruins you, or the mistake shapes you? That's why I said again, entrepreneurship is about, there's no guarantee of success. You have to have this sort of trait of trying. So now to practicalize it from a Namibian context, there's this term that a friend of mine taught me quite well, and you hear it. It's a fancy word called bootstrapping. But what does it really mean, especially in the Namibian environment? You see, side hustles are the best tests of business ideas. You know why I say that? I think you mentioned now you have a job or something permanent, and then you're trying a lot of stuff. You have to do that in the Namibian environment. That's how you can first have a soft landing. So I'm going to also, I know it doesn't apply to everyone, because some, and I'll touch on the point of the survival entrepreneurship, but majority, if you see a lot of people, what do I do with my savings? If you're an entrepreneur, that's how you start to create a soft landing. You pilot. In Namibia, piloting is so important because that gives you market feedback to say, okay, what is the clientele telling me? Maybe now if I'm in the services business, you are setting up a show or whatever, there's feedback you get from that, which means your second, third, and fourth show will likely be better, right? But now if you are an entrepreneur that has no means, and I think this is where a lot of us are, particularly in the Namibian space, where you now talk about survival, where it is, if this business doesn't work, I'm doomed. Those people have a very different mindset. That's why I said problems is ultimately your business opportunity. The way they pursue an opportunity relative to us who know, oh, this business can fail, I still have a job, is very different. The way they see risks is very different, let's say, to you and I, where we know that, okay, if this business doesn't work out, I still have some security. Those entrepreneurs, and a lot of them, I've learned quite a lot from the informal market entrepreneurs. So what you may not know is I was also a bit in the second-hand car market.
Wow, okay.
Your Donkey Botswana,
Yeah.
But the thing I'm trying to share with you here is when I had a lot of engagement, especially with those people in that space, that was their sole business. Their level of resilience is astonishing. And I say this because, like you're saying, the cost of failure is so severe, but unfortunately, in this Namibian environment, without you trying, you will never get the opportunity to show someone, what can I do?
Mm.
And it goes again back to your question. Europe and advanced economies, they reward failure because the market is of such a nature. You have access to risk capital, which allows you to obviously make mistakes. So here in Namibia, the cost of failure is high. But from what I've seen and from my current experience, once you are able to prove concept, you now start to connect it again to a network of mentors, opening up relationships. That is really what helps you sort of create a softer landing, if I can put it that way. I hope that makes sense. You really have to be intentional and be comfortable making mistakes. So I cannot sugarcoat that entrepreneurship is one way you will have a safety net. Sometimes you just don't have it. If you're cut out to be an entrepreneur, it's part of the game.
Yeah.
You will live through these cycles. Will I say it's going to be an easy road? Never. But is it a fulfilling one? Oh, absolutely. If there's one thing I enjoy waking up, so I call myself a corporate entrepreneur because I've been on both sides, private and on the streets. I think there's one joy that entrepreneurship gives that a corporate job will never give you. There are many people who are hoping that Ignatius wakes up. That pressure, you see, it's exciting. It's invigorating knowing that you are making a difference in people's lives. So why I'm sharing all these things is these are all the traits that will help you create a soft landing for yourself. When you have fallen hard, you reach square zero. But those lessons, that will ultimately is what will then shape you for greater success tomorrow.
Mm.
Yeah.
Interesting. Because I think also what I'm thinking while you're speaking is I make this joke every now and then where it's like, I say, I think at this point in life, if it means I have to live under a bridge, as long as I have a blanket to sleep in, I'll make a plan. And that's how I view failure, to a sense, is that you also almost have to be okay with it to a point where it's like, because I try, it's jokes, right? But what I'm trying to do is to desensitize it, because I mean, I've gone camping. It's basically camping under a bridge, if you think about it, you know.
Yes.
And so, because what I used to think is you build the business, but the business builds you. It's the person you have to become to build the business. And so that's what I quickly realized is I'm lacking a lot, right? You learn a lot from your mistakes. It's even a thing in the beginning phase. I used to have like emotional roller coasters and all those things. And I think I was reading something funny that entrepreneurs only have two moods, which is we need to scale this business or let's go sell the truck. Going through the one or the other.
You're in constant survival and growth.
Yeah. So I think, that's what I view failures. It's like you almost have to sort of desensitize yourself to it in a way.
It's not glamorous.
Yeah.
And it's not to cut you, like, you really hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
You really, when we say entrepreneurship is not glamorous, you have to be comfortable with almost being at zero, because then you will appreciate every dollar that comes into the business.
Yeah.
You can't learn that. You will not be able to learn that lesson purely from success.
Yeah.
So you are spot on.
Yeah. I think also one thing I do definitely, what makes me a bit, it's like, okay, cool, you desensitize yourself to failure and all that, but it's like, you see, when you're an entrepreneur, it's almost like, people, it's like every day is constant survival and whatnot. But one of the things I've observed, especially in my case, it ties a lot to capital, like what you're speaking about when you're saying, what's it called? Working capital, or risk capital.
Risk capital,
and
yes.
so, it was a study I was reading where it said that people that come from wealthy or middle class to upper class families are more likely to succeed. And the study was saying that it's more so tied to this ability to be able to be comfortable with failure. So now, obviously, a very poor person's relationship with failure is not too great, because they've tasted failure, and then maybe you've been looked down on at school. For them, failure probably means no food for the family for the next couple of weeks. And so one of my observations has been, especially for those entrepreneurs that start, without that certain...
Those means.
Yeah, those means.
Yeah.
Cash. Having money on the side. It's like you're able to breathe. It's like oxygen, And so, I don't know, what's your viewpoint in creating that sort of like working capital? Why do you think Namibia is not at that point, or at least for many entrepreneurs? I think there are initiatives to create things like that. But what is it that that you think is taking time, or that there's,
No, I get the essence of your question, and I want to say one mustn't lose hope. There's a word you're going to be hearing a lot, Ignatius, is backing the jockey. So what that just means is, who is the person behind the business? So you're very right. And let's be honest, of our economy, 2/3 are unemployed. You have 1/3 that are really in the upper middle class. And obviously you have your wealthy bracket. More than 2/3 of the economy is in your informal. So what we're discussing here, it must be realistic to what is on the ground. I want to say that maybe in 10, 15 years ago, some of the opportunities that we have now were not there. And what are they? Right now, you have, let's say, we want to speak about the youth fund, for instance. And it's also been increased for those in upper youth. So even those now up until 40. Thank you very much, government. But jokes aside, you speak about it, and it's statistics, right? To say why those who are poorer have the least chance of success. But I want to say also, it also depends on how hungry are you to maximize opportunities that are given to you. So why I mentioned like this youth fund, capital is everything, right? But remember in our earlier discussion, what is our context? We don't have a lot of business entrepreneurship experience. You look at the statistics where it's showing that Namibia is ranked the lowest in terms of people wanting to be an entrepreneur. So we must address the symptom. The symptom is skills. We don't have a lot of, that skill set or business acumen. So you need to build it. That's why I say again, and you look at some of the policies that we didn't have in the past, but now we have them, like your mentorship coaching and some of them. You need capacity building to just be able to prep people to be ready for when you receive working capital. So right now you have opportunities with the National Youth Fund where it is tailored to early stage investing. It's tailored to people who have never been in business before, but you need to prepare yourself. So you need to, and I really want to say is we need to take advantages of avenues like that. There are other initiatives that are on the way. There's a national venture capital fund that will soon be, I believe it will take off this year. You see, now we're starting to speak again, venture capital, risk capital. So that's the type of capital we need in Namibia. You know, we mustn't bash. Sometimes I think the banks deserve it, but we must understand that banks is not your first source of innovation capital. Banks are not there for that. Banks come when you know exactly what you're doing and you know exactly why you need their money to expand. But many businesses in Namibia are still here, early, finding their feet, doing market testing.
No systems.
No systems. You see, so you need different form of capital for that. And right now in our system now, that source of capital is the youth, is like the youth fund. Because look at the population also. 70% are 35 and below. So that's the first source of capital. And I think a lot of it, the cost there, I believe, is capped at 4%. In my world, that is equivalent to a grant. You are not going to get anything better than that, other than free money. So we need to also be realistic. And I really want to say to the young, up-and-coming business people or entrepreneurs, let's take the opportunities we have with both hands. When you speak of systems, let's not rah-rah. What does systems mean? It's just processes. You need to have processes. Even no matter how small you are, you need to have a process in place that just, gives you some structure. Because ultimately, investors or capital follows structure. And you see, because we don't have a lot of that business or entrepreneurship skill set, that's where at times the capital doesn't follow us. But now in the time we're living, there wasn't a youth fund where many of us started. There wasn't. And I'm not even that old, right? So when you have an opportunity like that where government has said, I think this year they approved 257 million, and I understand the intention is to scale that up to 500 million. That's a good start.
Yeah.
And I really want to advise that, especially those who are starting, prep yourself to understand what business you want to put forth. And when you get funding, the key thing is linking it back to the ecosystem. Because the moment you get funded by the youth fund, you are de-risked. Then it means me as an asset manager or me as a commercial bank, I now can also participate in that space. So let us think further than, as you said now, getting just the chelete in the bank account. Because now you must survive.
Yeah.
We need to train our people to think beyond survival. Again, that requires capacity building.
Yeah.
So I think I can't emphasize this more enough. Capacity building follows capital.
Yeah.
It's hand in hand.
You were telling me, I really want to speak about these statistics that you were telling me.
Yes.
Because, or I don't know if it's very accurate, but you were telling me that currently, as you said, within the youth, there's about 80% of youth that don't want to do entrepreneurship and only 20% that are interested in entrepreneurship. Now, this 80% is interested in building careers within the government, within all these other places.
Yes.
But now, the amount of jobs being created cannot appeal to this because now the interest of actually creating the jobs is much lower. Why do you think that is so?
Yeah, I want to give a diplomatically correct answer, but we're also on a podcast to speak freely. It's just the way our system is designed. I would say, what are the key challenges? So you see, before capital, again, I want to come back to policy and access to market. You see, unfortunately, economy only grows if you have a lot of economic activity. So the way Namibia is currently structured, a lot of the economic activity is driven by government. So it's good, for government stimulation, but it's not sustainable. Where we are now, government can no longer stimulate the way they could in the past, which now made, hopefully, working for a government parastatal, the pathway, or even private sector creating jobs. Now we're in an era where entrepreneurship is the survival. Otherwise, you don't put bread on the table. So we can't escape from that. But what makes Namibia quite tough, as I said, is because you're a small market, the rate at which you scale is quite limited. But then again, I say, entrepreneurship, all of us want to be like Elon Musk, but we must be realistic. You can't.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times you hear in venture capital, you hear about unicorns. In my honest opinion, we need to be realistic for our own market. Sometimes your peak could be 15, 20,000 a month. But if you started from zero, that's a great start.
Yeah.
We need to be realistic about what are our targets. And for me, once we get there, that's how you really start to now create momentum, particularly with youth-led enterprises. It is not a glamorous profession being an entrepreneur. Let no one kid you.
Yeah.
Before you get to a Range Rover, you need to start with a Toyota Vitz. It's a pathway. In your business, if you get funded now by the youth fund, maybe you're in logistics, NPT 200 can do the job that a Ford Ranger can do. But now when you buy a Ford Ranger, your business is going to suffer. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
That again comes back to capacity building and skill set. So in the Namibian environment, I think really what affects us is obviously there are challenges with accessing market, here and there access to capital. But I think the biggest challenge just comes with mindset, but also we don't fund capacity building initiatives enough to train people to be more entrepreneurial minded. And it starts even as early as high school and university. When you look at some of the programs, there's no offense to them, it's still done from an academic sort of point of view. While me and you know the reality of entrepreneurship is different. Many of the textbooks tell you that entrepreneurship is like this, but reality, oh my friend, it is
like this.
Yes. The last thing I really want to say is, again, you see now we're focusing a lot on vocational sector. Why? What's happening in Namibia? It's emerging skills, energy, oil and gas. But there again, it requires capacity. It requires skills. We need to be willing, to be upskilled, to then be relevant for those opportunities. So I emphasize a lot on this attitude because we need to be willing to be skilled, then the opportunities will come.
I like that because we're starting to see also a lot of, I think, foreign interest into Namibia, right?
100%.
And I think it's definitely, there are a lot of great things that have been happening in Namibia as well. And I have one friend that always says, that shifted my mindset a little bit, because we always say Namibia is a small country, we're 2.5 million people, we're 3 million people.
Yes.
Then one day I was sitting with him and he says, that's 3 million people. If you had a product that everyone wants, that's going for $1, that's $3 million a day. And then it started to shift my mindset a little, because there are a lot of things that haven't been done for people in the rural areas. There's still a lot of business opportunities, and the lack of opportunity is also an opportunity at times.
Yes.
And so I think
great point. Absolutely great point.
Yeah. So what I'd like to touch on as well is, you're in asset management. We spoke a little bit about also venture capitalism. And with venture capitalism, how does one position themselves, firstly, for investment? How does one position themselves to be attractive to investors? Because at the end of the day, that's I think most entrepreneurs' dream, right? And even with that, on the other hand as well, I want to speak about wealth creation, because you have that unique point of view of being in asset management. Because for someone to come and say, here's my money, I want you to keep it growing.
Yes.
That's a lot of pressure. And from the portfolio manager side, to have the confidence to say, don't worry, we'll make it grow. Yes. It's also a very interesting thing for me, especially, when we both know that, you see, it's a game of probabilities. And I want to hear your point of view on that.
No, that's a very intelligent question. I'm going to answer the easier one first, which is, let's say in asset management, particularly in the listed space, that's where people really give you money than to grow their money. So there, what helps, again, it's also probabilities, but it's conviction. So in my space, a lot of the times you invest in, asset classes that you understand, which is government bonds, fixed income, or your stock exchange, be it on the NSX or on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. The risk profile there is more defined. So there, your ability to consistently sort of generate returns for your investors or your clients that beat inflation, you have sort of a more defined universe. So this is not your Forex, your Bitcoin. You follow. These are more in your traditional asset classes. And there, what really helps is firstly understanding the market, but a lot of it is based on conviction. And when I say conviction, it's also a probability. And one thing I've also learned managing money is that be transparent with your clients. And when I say this, even during times of uncertainty, clients will keep money with you if they trust what, Ignatius? Your process. Because your investment philosophy is driven by your process. And I've seen a lot of the times, once you pick good companies over time compound returns. You can get lost in the noise and be like a day trader where you buy the share today, you sell it tomorrow. Consistently, when you see the companies that have done well, your Allen Greys, your N91s, and now even your emerging asset managers, they all follow the same trait. It's long-term thinking.
Okay.
You see, that is what generates consistent returns over time and picking, obviously, the right companies. So when you now move over to your question of how do you prepare to be attractive to a potential venture capital list, what I want to say is Namibia, that's an emerging sort of asset class. We haven't had it. We've had what they call venture capital, but it's been more sort of... So venture capital is really equity. What do we look for? We want to invest in high growth potential SMEs. So how do you prepare yourself? And I'll go back to the joke you made earlier with the mindset. Yes, we're 3 million people, but to me, if your product, like this water, if you've convinced 100 people to buy your products consistently, that already shows me you have something to work with, right? So what do I need to do now to get this 100 products to maybe 20,000? That's now growth, that's scaling. So once you can penetrate and get consistently 100 or 200,000 customers out of a population of 3 million, you already have something. Are we together? So venture capitalists now start to look at what is your growth potential? What is your scalability? What is the potential of this, your product, not only working in Namibia, but potentially working also in Botswana or your neighboring countries? You see, at times, we limit ourselves and only make this excuse that, Namibia is small. But who's your market? Africa is your market. Why do you always see that a lot of non-African entrepreneurs succeed? Like you see these Silicon Valley and them. They don't just only operate in the US. So they look at their market, reach their ceiling. So the way VC works is I put equity into your company. I try to help you scale it. But for me, what am I looking at is exiting maybe the next 6 or 7 years. So to prepare, you need to package yourself and say, yes, there's 3 million people in Namibia, but this product or service I'm selling, what is my ceiling? Is it 20,000? Is it 50,000? Once you can, even reach half of that, you already start to be attractive to a potential venture capitalist. Why? Because our mandate is early stage. So our role is to come in and help you then scale from a 20,000 to 100,000. But you can't appeal to a traditional venture capitalist if you've done nothing.
So it's not
That's grant funding, man.
So it's not necessarily just tied to revenue. It's also about market potential and market value.
Correct. Yes. So like what solution are you providing that has a high potential of scaling? You see, so let me give you a typical example. We talk a lot now about healthcare. You see now telemedicine has already made money in advanced economies, but it's picking up here. Those type of things. Tech. How can you scale without having to hire 100 people. Those use technology, you see? So those type of businesses are quite attractive to venture capitalists because it's software,
Yeah.
There it's about now subscriptions. So you see, it's more about the solution I'm bringing to the table. Is it scalable? That is really what it's about. So venture capital is meant to take that risk with you. So I like to use the term in Afrikaans, where banks are sometimes bankbroek. VC is where venture capital is meant to take the risk, that de-risk it then for your commercial banks or your private equity. So private equity doesn't come here. Private equity comes once you've gotten to a certain stage of maturity. Then private equity comes to help you now scale and expand. Yeah. So I hope that answers your question. You need to package.
Yeah.
It's not just speaking nice English. You need to package.
No, that's very good. I understand it, because immediately then I start thinking of companies like Jabu. We've got also recently, actually, one of our client we were pitching, and they're in the pharmaceutical business. And I went to them. I thought, they were a small pharmacy. Then they're like, no, we just opened a location in Kenya. We've got 2 now in South Africa, and we're opening 3 more, blah, blah, blah. And then they start mentioning all these different countries. And I'm like, and it's a conversation also I tapped into with one friend. His name is Philip Thiessen, Axel Thiessen's son from Simon. And he also spent a lot of time in Germany. And then at some point he was like, let me go back to Namibia. Comes back to Namibia, builds a platform for events, ticketing and all that, called Nam Events. So it's essentially supposed to be a service for events and cashless payments and all that, and also a loyalty program on site. So we're having a nice chat, a coffee at some point. And he's like, what I've realized about Namibia is very good for trying out ideas.
Piloting.
Because once that thing as well, like we said, sometimes because people aren't yet so open to many ideas, gives you a great platform to try out things. And similarly, we have had that same experience with trying out event ideas. We started this other blind dating show on the side, and the vision is to take it to different countries as well, almost like Love Island and everything. And the way people, if an idea is good, the way people absorb it here is crazy. And so if a market like Namibia can accept your idea, you will have a very good, once capital is there, you will have a very good chance in other economies. And so that's what he was telling me as well.
And you see how our conversation has evolved, and we've been answering the questions in very different forms. Namibia is very tough, but it's a great environment to test. So how do you create a soft landing? Test small. Once you can succeed here, I 100% agree with you. You can succeed anywhere in the world, because it's here in Namibia so tough to get the buy-in. But like you said, there's this thing of FOMO, fear of missing out. Once you just crack it, there's just a way, we love new things. It's like any new sport that comes out. You just see the traction is building, but then obviously the challenge is then maintaining it. But you're so right. Once you can get through that initial hurdle of showing what you can do and getting that market, acceptance, then you go. Where we get it wrong is then we become comfortable once you're growing and maybe your client base is only like 200,000. We don't now strive to go outside. But now there's capital looking for expansion.
And I just also, I hope more people realize that, because it also shifted the way I'm starting to think or envision for our business. Because as I was telling you in the email, we want to target now international clients. Because a good way to look at it is, because we're in the marketing space. When we do market, we just think servicing. But, a good way to think about it, I also had that in the podcast with Shuna Daringo. And I think she was saying we were speaking about something with exporting services as well.
Absolutely.
Because, as you said, with now new things like AI, software and all that.
Digital economy.
Digital economy. There's so many other services that can be exported. I like to always give the example of how the BBC spent $5 million to renew their logo. And I always make this joke. I know at least 10 guys that can do it for 500K. But there's opportunity for things like that. It's just about positioning yourselves for that kind of market. We're still seeing, because at the end of the day, if you look at more developed economies, they're always looking for ways to cut costs, create new revenue, create new possibilities. So when we are able to even export services as well, it cuts costs for so many operations drastically, and it then is a benefit. And then because of the difference in cost of living here, then it becomes top dollar. And everyone wins at the end of the day, and creates so many other different opportunities. So that's what I've been looking at as well. And when you look at it like that, then it's exciting, because now you're not just fighting for the same clients like every local marketing company. Like, yeah, we want your banks, we want your F&B corporates, and there's like 10 other different agencies pitching for them. But creating a completely new form of revenue stream, form of opportunity that other people haven't attempted, and that I think is also quite exciting.
You've again hit the nail on the head, and I think that COVID was a disaster. I think for the loss of human life, and businesses suffered. But if there's one thing COVID brought, was that flexibility. So again, whether in entrepreneurship or in career services, you can render your skill outside of Namibia, and I think we wouldn't have been able to think that way had some of those things not happened. So it speaks directly to your point. I mean, you look now at the digital economy. I mean, 4 or 5 years ago, maybe even stretching it to 10, being an influencer, was that a career path? No. So we joke about it, we laugh about it, but I mean, and I'm sure you discuss this as well with Tuna, the creative industry, what's your biggest asset? It's your followers. I mean, now I think we have high speed in the country, and it's causing, but it's causing, sort of, high sort of activity, but it's for the right reasons.
Yeah.
Again, it's just the way the economy has moved. And he's a what? What is he? Is he an influencer? What is he?
He's a live streamer.
He's a live streamer. But I'm just saying, but look at the activity. There was a guy, I forgot his name. I saw an article yesterday. He's a streamer or something like that from Sierra Leone. He signed like a 30 million.
Kabi Lane. Yeah.
Yes. Again, let's think out of the box. Yeah. I think now with this digital economy, the opportunities are endless.
Yeah.
So it speaks directly to your point. Here, you're a marketing agency. Once you go online, you're going to actually see that there are a lot of people who might need your services. And all you need to do is put yourself out there and package yourself. So yeah,
like that.
It's exciting.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
Anyways, I did want to just dive into 2 more things before we round it off. Firstly, it was sales. Because you've had a lot of experience with sales and, relationship building. And I think what I'm getting from you, like, sales is important, but what's more important is the relationships you build. Because you can get very far with the relationships, but then the sales is like a cherry on top. Or I don't know, is it vice versa? So I want to ask you a little bit on that. And then the other thing is, tell me of a challenging time in your life. Because I think, you've had your ups and downs as well. And as you say, entrepreneurs, it's stressful. It's very stressful. It's, it does what it does. But I want to hear what's a challenging, tell me about a challenging time in your life. Yeah. Something that where you really thought maybe this was not going to work out for you.
Yeah, that's a good one. So let me answer the first question. So, and very simply, the relationships is your business. Who are the relationships? Is your customers. You need to understand your customer. Whether you are, in a services business or in our space, who's your customer? It's your stakeholder. They are the livelihood of your business. That is of utmost importance. I will say when you manage your customer and your relationship well, the sales will follow. So I think that one addresses that.
What do you think makes a good salesperson though? Because I think a lot of us think it's extroverts, but actually not. What do you think makes a good
For me, what makes a good salesperson is understanding your customer. Because, and I want to simplify it. If you're selling, I want to give an example. Cars. Yes. I think that's the best one now. You've seen recently that a lot of the Chinese car brands have started to take over, right? And it's also come down to an economics issue. But how do you retain the guys who love your Mercedes, your Audi, and so forth. What do you think is going to still keep those guys coming back? It's the quality of your service. It's brand loyalty. If there's one thing that Namibia has, is brand loyalty. So that is what also now differentiates, an average salesperson to a top salesperson. You see, once you can manage your stakeholders, and in this case, your clients, loyalty matters. I think customer loyalty and brand reputation is I would say is also one of the livelihoods of one's business. Because I think, and back to our car example, yes, you've seen a lot of people moving over, let's say, to the Havals and them, but it's really from an economics issue. But I tell you right now, what keeps certain legacy brands in place is about the quality of your service delivery. Yes, that making that customer feel welcome or special.
Yeah.
I tell you, that AI cannot replace. And I mean, you've seen it. I mean, many of us also in the banking space, they joke and say, okay, whether this bank hasn't treated you well, but over the years, you see what I mean? The relationship that has built over the time, it buys you those 1 or 2 bad days. So back to your very pertinent question, I would say the biggest challenge I faced, so obviously coming from a structured, let's say, corporate background, when you move from corporate where everything is sort of stable or secured, every X day on the month, you're going to have a salary. When you move into an environment where everything is on probability, so as much as I'm still in the private sector space, the challenge I faced was with the transition is just the being comfortable with uncertainty. And like you, it also didn't come out of the box. It came also from making mistakes and reaching a place of where you accept discomfort as a place of normal. So I want to quote Steve. What is this? Is it Steve Harvey? Not Steve Harvey. Who's the guy in Suits? Harvey Specter. There's a quote on one of the episodes. He said, "Life is like this. I live like this."
Yeah.
What does that mean? He's a calculated risk taker. He loves the thrill of, risk taking. And I realized very early on, I like taking risks, but I also like, impact. So to get to that place of comfortability, that's been about, it's maybe eight years or so that I've been fully away from, the traditional corporate setting. Even now, if I tell you that I'm 100% comfortable, hell no, not at all.
Yeah.
But to reach this frame, I struggled a bit in the early years because, you needed to sort of, the way you look at things, it really changed my whole perspective. It's at that point, I started valuing the importance, even much more, of relationships. Because when you're not in a safe sort of space, you have to depend on others. So as much as you bring your value and what, you need to depend on others. You need to network. You need to have a wider support system to always keep you emotionally in check. I think you mentioned earlier that you battled a lot with emotions. Trust me, 2-3 years, you ask yourself, was it the right thing to leave where you are comfortable until retirement? But it comes back to what do you want to achieve in life. So really, I want to make a difference. So I want to be that person where that, this chap, this guy impacted lives. That's the space I'm in. So if you look at particularly my journey, I'm in a very interesting niche where it's policy, as you said, it's capital allocation, but it's also entrepreneurship. So having lived on both sides, it has made me very comfortable with uncertainty and being fine with not making always the right decision. But what those challenges have helped me, I think, is really helped me to be very decisive. So I'm I'm calculated. I say, look, if I believe in something, I go for it. If I don't, I don't I'm not in the middle. So it's either you go for it or you don't. And I think that also helps leadership, because you see indecision, and you'll experience this a lot in entrepreneurship and even in a general sense of managing others. Indecisiveness, analysis paralysis, is one of the worst things for a business person. You have to be decisive. So I've become very comfortable with making mistakes, but I think owning it, accountability, I think that's what you learn by being in an uncertain environment. So I would say that is really my lessons from the challenges that I've experienced. Yeah. Do I still question myself every day? Absolutely. But do I wake up every morning loving the space that I'm in? 100%.
That's good.
Yeah.
One last thing from my side.
Yes.
I think you've been in the finance space for a long time. What do you define as real success at this point? And what is your advice to young Africans out there?
So just frame your question.
So yes, what do you define as real success at this stage in your life? But I feel like you've explained that actually in the previous one. So let's skip that one. But what is your advice to young Africans at this stage?
In this stage, being it whether early career or wanting to be in entrepreneurship?
I think related to entrepreneurship. Yes. What is your advice to young Africans in regards to entrepreneurship? Because I think a lot will be happening over the next few years.
Yes. Okay, first advice, and I think it's something we've spoken a lot on today. You have to be comfortable with yourself. This word we said of backing the jockey, what's coming is a lot of businesses or capital allocators, and I think it's a good thing. They're looking now, who is behind the business idea? So you need to package yourself very well. These are things that you can do without money. So what do I mean by packaging yourself? Know your story. Storytelling in the African context is golden. Getting an opportunity to be on platforms like this, you take it. That all builds sort of your personal profile. So, and I'm trying to list these things that don't require money, because ultimately money will follow a packaged product. So again, upskill yourself. How do you do that? Particularly, let's look at an example now of oil and gas that's emerging. The first oil is likely coming in 2030, but it's not then now you start to prepare yourself. How do you prepare yourself now? Understand what skills, what services are going to be required in 2-3 years' time. So what am I advising the young entrepreneurs? Prepare for the opportunity. Don't let the opportunity come to you. Do you understand what I mean? Prepare. IQ. Again, I want to repeat, is that luck and where preparation meets. That's the intersect. If you do not prepare, the opportunity won't find you. But sometimes when you're prepared, you get lucky. Are we together? So young entrepreneurs, upskill yourself, but take advantages of opportunities that present themselves, not with one hand, with two hands. And we speak a lot about survivor entrepreneurship, but let's embrace our reality. In Africa, there's more doubters than there are believers. So again, how do you overcome that? You need to be comfortable with yourself. Be comfortable that you're going to make 2, 3, 4 mistakes, right? But have that sort of self-determination to say that, no, man, I'm going to make it regardless of what anyone says. Again, what are we back to? You have to be nuts to be an entrepreneur. Embrace it and be authentic. I think this is the real, let's say, real talk, not textbook. You need to be authentic and believe in yourself, because those who succeed are actually those ones who have overcome multiple challenges. And that is ultimately what builds you. So you can see a lot of the things I've said have nothing to do with capital. But me as a capital allocator, I listen to what is Ignatius' story? how have you gotten to where you've been? You're looking for certain traits. Capital follows resilience. It also follows potential and growth. From your story, I can already tell you're not going to give up on your first challenge because you have a whole bloodline waiting for you to succeed. You hear me? So we laugh about these things, but these are the qualitative things that capital looks at. Because ultimately, sometimes, Ignatius, you are the key to that business. My chips are with you. Do you understand? So we really need to look after ourselves, but we really need to believe and be confident in our ability, because that is ultimately what you're selling. That's my advice.
The business doesn't die when the business doesn't die when there's no capital. The business dies when the founder loses hope.
Hope, correct. Because that hope is the growth that you're buying. Is that founder, even with the systems, funny enough, especially in the African context. But successful businesses, obviously, when the founder dies, the business moves on. But more often than not, and it's the nature of Africa, things are tied to the founder. Yeah. In Europe and them, I mean, you can look at Warren Buffett's businesses. You can see how they've set themselves up. It's generation onto generation. So that will probably be the only takeaway, I would say, as African businesses. We need to adopt more generational thinking, because most businesses, once the founder goes, that business is gone. But the founder is everything, unfortunately. So, yeah.
That's a good point to end. Really appreciate the conversation, Arinze. That was, I have a lot of thinking to do from my side, and I appreciate what you had to share today, because you sit in a very unique position to be able to share your story. I think it's very unique to you, and not a lot of people have experienced being in that kind of exposure. So we could really learn a lot from what you have to say. And I'm just thinking, I think we might have to do another one. Because while you're speaking, I'm just like, can I ask more? Can I ask more?
Yes.
But, at some point, night has to come.
No, 100%. And I also want to thank you as well. You were proactive in reaching out. So you see, again, entrepreneurship, you can't teach it. I could have said no. All the other people that you've invited on the platform, you have to be proactive to reach out. So what you're doing is also fantastic. I think this is going to be a great platform. And as I mentioned earlier, and I'm saying it live here, we have to find ways to support also what you're doing. Because we need, more Namibian sort of success stories. Yeah. To build confidence and create a softer landing for failure. Because it's those that fail are ultimately the ones that we need to back. Those are the risk takers. So, yeah.
Thank you very much.
No, very good,
Appreciate it.
100%. Thanks a lot for this.
How was it?
No, fantastic.
Good, man.
Fantastic.
This was a nice one. I enjoyed it.
We didn't even actually stick so much to the script. We just
I realized it's real great, eh? We just changed everything. But I think at some point I would love to have another one even.
Yes.
Because it was broad. We spoke about a lot of things.
Yes.
And I see also, I get a better understanding now of what it is that I can have you speak on even further. So something even more technical. It would be, or even for NIFA Academy to have this, I don't know, do you watch The Diary of a CEO? Or
Yes.
there are other
seen
podcasting formats where they are starting to do now almost like a debate where you have three people. And another cool concept I've been thinking of testing is where you have a camera angle from the top and we both have notebooks, big notepads, and then we do something like how to get good at sales, for example. And then we take your experience and put it into steps. And then that 30 to 45 minute session is just on getting good at sales. And people are actually seeing as you're taking notes and everything, writing everything, almost like a whiteboard. That's interesting. Yeah, that's something cool we want to try.